Welcome to this presentation, IoT security and its disturbing status. My name is Pieter Meulenhoff. I work for Eurofins Cybersecurity, and that's part of Eurofins, a worldwide organization, about 50,000 employees, and we're specialized in testing on a large area of subjects and topics. Thanks to the internet, you're able to see this presentation as of now. And the internet has given us a lot. And basically the internet is now everywhere. As computers have shrunk over the years, it is trivial to build in a microprocessor in nearly every device. And it seemingly becomes even more difficult to buy a device that is not smart or not connected to some kind of network. Together with the Dutch Consumer Association, the Consumentenbond, we performed an evaluation, security evaluation of several consumer IoT devices. And those are popular devices in the Netherlands, like children's smartwatches, home automation devices, webcams and baby monitors. And we assess those devices for security vulnerabilities. As an example, to illustrate what kind of vulnerabilities we discovered, here's a children's GPS watch, and that watch was configured with a default password that is the same for all the same devices. It was not required to change that password, and with such a password it's possible to send an SMS to the watch and enable a voice connection. Also, there is an API that backs a mobile app that makes it possible to find other accounts, and by that and combining several vulnerabilities you can talk to other devices, smartwatches. Furthermore, the app itself, on the outset of the package, it's instructed to download a mobile app from a website instead of the Google Play Store, and that requires users to lower their security level. Another example is a baby monitor. That's a device installed in the room where the baby is sleeping, and then through a mobile phone you can talk, see, hear your baby. It operates as a Wi-Fi access point, and after configuration you can attach it to your local network, but after that configuration the Wi-Fi access point is still open and you can access it without authentication and reattach to another network, or even perform a specific GET request and access credentials of your own home Wi-Fi network. And furthermore, on the network side, the baby monitor generates a lot of network traffic that does not appear to be related to the baby monitor, like Gmail services or remote administration sites. That is very strange. Overall, we discovered 165 security vulnerabilities, ranging from a few critical to several high, mediums, lows, informationals. To summarize, here's a list of the typical security problems we discovered in these devices, and there's a great alignment with lists such as the OWASP IoT Top 10, and you can see popular problems such as weak authentication, missing updates and security patches in there, and unencrypted network traffic. In all devices we tested, we found several security vulnerabilities, and that confirms the view that security of IoT devices is weak. We disclosed vulnerabilities to the involved vendors, and a few of them resolved vulnerabilities. That was great, but overall the maturity level of the vendors we contacted appears to be quite low. Our results are confirmed by the news we have seen in the last years. Here is an example of a security breach in 2014 of security cameras, and that breach was effectively the result of weak passwords. And a few years later, in 2016, we had a Mirai botnet. Mirai operated by trying to connect to other hosts and using a short list of default passwords. And when successful, it installed itself and then began spreading itself further, trying to connect to other hosts, basically similar to a virus. Overall, our results and what can be seen in the news gives the impression that IoT security level is quite low. But at the same time, security problems are not that complex. Think of such a default password. And that may give an opportunity that we can make a lot of progress on the field of IoT security and improvement, but at the same time with limited effort. The Radio Telecommunications Authority in the Netherlands is also worried about the current state of IoT security. They, Agentschap Telecom, asked us at Eurofins to perform a study on the biggest security problems of IoT devices and then propose requirements that are the most effective in improving that. This slide provides an overview of this study and explains what we did for the Radio Telecommunications Authority in the Netherlands. First, we started by performing an extensive literature study to provide an evidence-based overview of the threat model and the biggest IoT security problems. Then, we selected 4 important IoT security standards, such as those from the IoT Security Foundation, ENISA, ETSI and OWASP. And then we scored the measures in each of these standards against the biggest security problems we found and the threat model, and that resulted in a list of top measures and subsequently a list of essential requirements for IoT devices. So let's start with the threat model. Basically, threats can be distinguished into 2 classes. Home IoT as an attack amplifier and Home IoT as an attack target. In Home IoT as an attack amplifier, the IoT device is used to attack other entities instead of the device itself or the owner. The Mirai botnet is a great example of this threat model. In Home IoT as a target, the owner or user of a device is the target of the attacker, for instance by restricting the use of a device and asking a ransom. Our literature study resulted in 11 security problems ordered by the security risk. You can see them on this slide. I'll only illustrate the top of this list as the entire report is publicly available. The number 1 of the list is incorrect access control, and you can think of problems like lack of authentication, missing authentication, or using default passwords. Number 2 is overly large attack surface, so a device has too many services exposed that are not needed for its operation and provide an attacker more options to abuse a device. And the third one is outdated software. Software with known vulnerabilities and possibly exploits are available which can easily be abused by attackers such as script kiddies. The next step was to gather security measures from standards such as those from ETSI, the IoT Security Framework, ENISA and the OWASP. On this slide is a complete list of the security standards we used in our study. Adding up all security requirements, we came to 415 security measures. The OWASP ISVS, that's maybe the less known from this list. That's the OWASP IoT Security Verification Standard, and that's a requirements framework similar to ASVS, and that is a popular framework for the verification of applications. In our evaluation, we use the following criteria. The first one is specificity, and that means that the requirement must not be open for interpretation and must be clear and understandable. I'll illustrate this with a few examples. This is an example security measure from one of these standards. In this case, the product does not accept the use of null or blank password. That security requirement is quite specific. It does not leave any room for discussion. This requirement, cryptographic keys must be securely managed, is less clear as the definition of secure is open for discussion. The other evaluation criteria are applicability, the requirement must be applicable to an IoT device, testability, a test can be created to verify conformance to requirement. We distinguish two separate forms of testability, black box and white box perspective. Black box is the perspective where a device is tested by, let's say, a consumer that buys a device from a shop, or white box, that is the vendor that has access to all designs, documentation, source code, etc. Achievability, the difficulty for a vendor to implement a requirement, the impact on the security problems we formulated, and the match with the threat model. Then we scored all security measures for all these evaluation criteria on a level from low to high and subsequently translated that into a score. This is a chart of the evaluation score for the security requirements ordered by their evaluation score. We decided to take the top 13 requirements just before the drop. These are the requirements that are easy to test, easy to implement, and with a high impact on resolving security problems. After the drop, testability becomes more difficult, or implementation becomes more difficult, and around 250, starting from there, approximately from there, then requirements are no longer specific. So now we have a list of top measures, and the next step is to translate them into the essential requirements. As some of the top 13 measures had a lot of similarity, we decided to group them into one requirement, like this, which basically means that the password must conform to the NIST SP800 digital identity guidelines. And this is the result, a list of 8 security requirements for IoT devices. Each of these requirements is easy to test, easy to implement, and with a large impact on securing IoT devices. If you want to read the full report and more documentation on these requirements, the document is publicly available. See the document link below on the slide. The next step was to evaluate the effectiveness of these requirements. And we did that by applying these requirements to the vulnerabilities we discovered for the IoT devices we assessed for the Dutch Consumer Association. That was at the beginning of this presentation. The 13 devices with 165 vulnerabilities. And the main question we had was, what would happen to these vulnerabilities if the vendor had followed these essential requirements? And this is the picture we get. The left bars are the number of vulnerabilities for each category without the requirements, and on the right, less transparent, are the vulnerabilities after applying these essential requirements. And what we see is that there are no critical vulnerabilities left. There's a dramatic drop in high-risk vulnerabilities, approximately a halving of medium-risk vulnerabilities, and the impact on low and informational risk vulnerabilities is quite low. To give an overview of the impact, what would happen if the essential requirements would be followed, then these 165 findings would result in 89 findings remaining, of which the majority is low risk and informational. We clearly see that the biggest impact of our requirements have the impact on the high and critical and somewhat medium risk vulnerabilities. A lot of low risk vulnerabilities we reported for the consumer organization were related to physical security, and as the dominant attacks for IoT devices are internet based, the impact, there's no relation with physical security as of yet. The next steps. These essential requirements are provided as input for the Radio Equipment Directive of the European Union. At the same time, we are continuing the evaluation of these essential requirements, either for their effectiveness on IoT security and at the same time to provide insight in the security status of the IoT ecosystem. And furthermore, we're still working together with vendors to help them improve the security of their products. And that brings me to the last topic of this presentation, standardization. Where our study for Agentschap Telecom resulted in a list of essential security requirements, you could ask the question, is that the final answer? Does that make devices secure? I don't think so. The list is meant as a quick win. Limited effort with a high impact on resolving the major security problems in IoT. But there's more. Especially IoT is a field, and IoT security is a field where all aspects of security come together. From hardware design up to policy and processes. And what we can see in the field of standards is that there are a lot available, and not each of them covers the whole spectrum. That's not really needed, but each standard is focused on a different topic. And that could make it complex for vendors to choose, to decide on which standard to adhere to or which standard to follow. Our answer to this development is the Secure Connected Device logo, which is a standardized test that is mappable to each of these major IoT security standards, like ETSI, OWASP, ENISA, the GDPR and the UL 2901. This Secure Connected Device testing standard simplifies the process for vendors to achieve compliance. The Secure Connected Device test is available at various levels with increasing coverage. Typically at the gold level, conformance to every standard can be verified. Here you can see the standards that we currently covered, that are those from ETSI, ENISA, the GDPR, OWASP IoT Top 10 and the UL 2901. And on our roadmap is the IoT Security Compliance Framework, IOXT, NIST recommendations for IoT, and the CTIA Cybersecurity Test Plan for IoT devices. And my expectation is that more will be added in the near future. Some concluding remarks. We still see a low level of IoT security in the field, and that needs to improve. And the essential requirements we proposed, that's a result of our study for Agentschap Telecom, could be a great step to improve that, and a great help in improving the base level, let's say the minimum level in IoT security. At the same time, our observation is that the IoT security field is improving. And as the efforts in standardization are increasing, and we are continuing our work in aligning testing and standardization. If you have any questions, comments or suggestions, please contact me or Eurofins to do that, and I would like to close with thanking you all for your attention. Bye.